Director of Media Monitoring Africa, William Bird, has written an open letter to Sky News over its report on child rape. The broadcaster aired a story on the rape of a 10-year-old girl from Diepsloot, and in it, basic media guidelines were flouted. Bird says the broadcast was unethical and Sky News violated the rights of the child. He joins us now in studio to expand on this a little bit more. William, thank you so much for coming in. Not too many of our viewers would know about the details of this report. What were the details that upset you?
So look here, the thing is we need to address, and I don't think we report issues of child rape generally and rape specifically anywhere near enough. So it's not that the issue of that. It's what I had issue with is the manner in which it was reported. So she went and the journalist went and interviewed the girl, the child rape survivor, and the mother in front of each other. Now that kind of thing, expecting them to relive some kind of massive trauma, for purposes other than, for no purpose other than to shock, I think is highly problematic. To then indirectly identify the girl by identifying the mother, where they live, puts them at physical risk of harm in their particular community. But I think also massively problematic was the fact that there was no explanation given to this. The only time anyone is given any explanation in the story is when a man says, you know, he did it because allegedly he thought that it would cure him of HIV. So you're left with this idea that you have this community where men just run around like this, that all of the men in that community are rapists, that these people are just statistics in this bizarre spiraling epidemic, that nothing's being done, the police are demoralized. And while there might be a pandemic of rape in our society, to suggest that it just is limited to poor black people and that it's okay to put their trauma out there for everyone to see, I think is highly, highly problematic.
And that was, of course, the way you widened the conversation around the coverage of black people who've suffered trauma or who are disempowered in some way or the other, which you say very eloquently in this article, we need to think hard about the depiction of in our news reports.
Yeah, so in South Africa, if you look at where we are now and with the way we used to report black people particularly and their trauma, is it's substantially different. You know, we used to be common for us to go in and have very significant close-ups of people just as they found their loved ones has been killed or just as they, in those moments of personal grief. Now you'd notice that with traumas and disasters that occur all over the world in developed nations, those families are always given respect. Their dignity and their privacy in those moments of anguish is respected, because actually you don't need to see someone crying to understand that a rape is a bad thing. You know, if that's your level of understanding, then I think you need to check yourself. So we have to ask, well, why is it okay to show them because they're poor and vulnerable and black that we can show them like that? I don't think that that's fair, and to me it fundamentally perpetuates a particular racist way of storytelling that we need desperately to move away from. You know, we started this year with the Penny Sparrow outrage, and this to me is Penny Sparrow encoded, if you like. It's doing what she said in a slightly more subtle way, but one that perpetuates all of the negative stereotypes.
I mean, certainly the issue of Penny Sparrow and the aftermath of it has forced us as journalists to relook at how we analyze issues, how we interrogate them. Do you feel that the media is in a space right now where it's becoming more conscientized about how conscious reporting has got to be done, especially where it comes to race?
Well, I hope so. I mean, because we live in a very different society to the one 20 years ago, and there's a level at which issues of racism are being addressed, and quite fundamentally they are. So to suggest that we're where we were 20 years ago is wrong, but to say that racism equally so doesn't exist now today is wrong. We know that women, for example, experience sexism on a daily basis, and it's very unusual for it to be as blatant or violent as it is, for example, to be quite subtle in the workplace. And you'll find the same thing with racism. It's not that common for the racist incidents to be every day out there, you know, using particular words and phrases. Very often it's about an attitude or an approach, and it's that kind of onward going dehumanization and humiliation that we need to be starting to say, well, how do we pick that up? Because what I think Penny Sparrow and the other incidents drew attention to was people are saying, no, this is enough now. And that what we're seeing with social media, and particularly the rise of black Twitter, means that you're starting to find a whole series of other voices that previously we didn't hear are now there, and they're expressing their anger. And I think that's a good thing.
That's a very interesting thing as well, because does the use of social media in our reporting and the reactions of ordinary people to issues like this, does it skew the way we report? Does it blow out of proportion acts of racism, or is it simply making us aware of new sentiments within society, resurgent sentiments we haven't been aware of?
Well, it probably does a little bit of both. You know, if we rely on Twitter a lot, which is good. I mean, it's a very important news source these days, but it does represent a very small portion of our society, and you know, one that usually has a particular financial class, etc., etc. So to think that that is representative of the views of South Africans, I think, is completely wrong. But where we start to see the rise of as I said, a group of people like Black Twitter, as we now refer to it, that I think is important, because it does reflect a series of views and ideas that previously we hadn't really seen, and that I don't think our news media have given enough evidence and enough primacy to.
To come back to the Sky issue, to just wrap up our interview, William, clearly certain important journalistic rules have been breached here.
Yeah.
And is there a way of getting together to discuss or to regulate the way certain international media are reporting on South Africans in this country and our lives?
It's a big problem, and one that we're now saying, well, how do we engage with this? Because they violated their own editorial code. So we're now looking at issues around, do we take a legal angle to this, because they do have some sort of basis here, so we might be able to take legal action on that basis, or do we look at other methods? Do we report them to their body in the UK, Ofcom, and see how they seek to deal with it? But I think a lot of it's not so much a punitive thing we're looking at. What we're trying to do is raise awareness of this and get them to shift the way that they report on our continent. And if they can't, then people should boycott Sky.
Very interesting indeed. Thank you so much for talking to us. William Bird, Director of Media Monitoring Africa.